For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from Cape Town, South Africa. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Asia, like the rest of the world, really awaiting the US inflation figures, which will show the way the Fed's going to go as far as interest rates are concerned. Not that they won't rise again, but the rising may be slightly shallower than has been in the past. So the Nikkei is fairly flat. China's inflation came in at 1.8%. That's more or less in line with what was expected. But an important development in the China economy is the help that the property market is getting. Present in a downturn, a lot of debt defaults and so on. Apparently, the authorities have been encouraging banks to roll out loans and also have been backtracking on debt constraints as well. So basically, China is looking at the real estate sector, the property sector, and saying it's gone too far. We're going to see what we can do to try to revive it. That's the bottom line there. As far as the United States is concerned, again, relatively flat in front of these inflation figures. It should dip 0.1% to about 6.5% year on year. These are the figures for this will refer to the month of December. November was 7.1%. The peak was 9.1% in June. People wondered whether it was the peak. Well, as far as the current figures show, it certainly was. The Dow was up 260 points in regular trade. Now, along with various employers asking people to, or telling their employees to come back to the office, Starbucks is now saying it must have people in the office 3 days a week. It's joining Disney, Twitter, Apple, which are mandating a sort of structural return to the office. And this will apply to employees, how they describe as within commuting distance. Exactly what that within commuting distance is has not been specified at the moment. Alphabet owns Google, and it's got a subsidiary which is a health science unit called Verily. It's going to cut 15% before it restructures, but the 15% is the important thing because it's exactly going along the lines of other companies in the United States who are worried about consumer demand. Never mind what happens in the larger numbers of the economy. As far as consumer demand is concerned, they feel it will slightly fall. And again, this is another aspect to all this. If you remember the Staten Island warehouses of Amazon, the staff got organised there and said that there should be some sort of debate about wages and the way that people were laid off. 8,300 workers there at the Staten Island thing, and this has now got an official federal Labour Board unit agreement behind what the Amazon workers were actually doing. Unfortunately for them, the average takes about 465 working days for collective bargaining to actually take place. And Amazon say they're going to appeal it. Of course they will. But nevertheless, it's quite an important union move in the United States. As far as FTX is concerned, you remember that was the cryptocurrency exchange that was valued at $32 billion. Well, it turns out that those put in charge of trying to bring the bankruptcy proceedings to a relatively speedy end have managed to lay their hands on $5 billion worth of liquid assets. That will go back to the shareholders. But the thing is, there's a lot more illiquid assets there, and that'll take much longer to entangle. But this is part of a quick move to try to repay investors as quickly as possible. Now, Disney is gearing up for a boardroom battle. So there's an activist investor called Nelson Peltz who actually succeeded in getting on the board of Procter & Gamble back in 2018. He's trying to do the same thing with Disney. He thinks that Disney has spent too much money on streaming rather than concentrating on their core activities. And Disney have hired an ex-Nike chairman called Mark Parker to try to block this. But there's a big boardroom battle actually brewing there. Russia, I'll take you to Russia now, and the revenue from fossil fuel exports is actually falling as a result of EU constraints on it. In fact, the revenues have, what I'm reading some reports of saying that the oil and other energy exports have collapsed, which means that it's losing about $170 million a day, 17% fall in earnings since that actually happened. And naturally, Ukraine is saying, well, that's working. Let's have some more. The EU, now the corruption probe, which is based on Qatar and its links with the inner workings of the EU, is extending its allegations around Pier Antonio Panzeri, saying that the Moroccans also have been paying him as well. These are just allegations, and it's ahead of more investigations coming as far as that's concerned. Just thought it was worthwhile keeping you up to date. The EU continues. The world's richest man, Bernard Arnault, of LVMH, which is a luxury goods company, has promoted his daughter Delphine to head the fashion house Dior, and LVMH is Europe's most valuable company. It's worth $336 billion, euro rather, as we speak. And all Arnault's children are in some sort of management role. But anyway, she's going to be in charge of the fashion house Dior. You'd probably recognize it from not Dior too, but Louis Vuitton and Moet Chandon Champagne. The UK is going to revamp the benefit system. Again, it's very, very complicated. What they're trying to do is get people actually back to work by saying they can still claim invalidity and sickness benefits. And they're also going to offer tax breaks to get people back to work. This is work very much in progress, and it certainly needs to be, because new figures out show that the UK is propping up, as it's being put, the G7 as far as productivity is concerned. It's the least friendly to productivity within the G7. Italy, Canada, France, Germany, and the United States, which is the highest productivity, are ahead of the UK completely, and it's performing extremely badly. That's one item which needs to be front and centre, I would have thought, on any business secretary's desk, as does the long-term unemployed. And briefly, oil. Brexit, so Brent and WTI up 2% on the day yesterday. Again, they're wondering where these inflation figures are going to go, and wondering about what the rate of interest rate rises is going to be in the United States. And gold is again in a holding pattern ahead of these US inflation figures. It's flirting with $2,000 an ounce. Whether or not it'll get there, well, we may find out tomorrow or perhaps next week. That's the global view.
All right, real quickly, Michael. The first thing is, why is the UK struggling to be able to eke out productivity this year? Because most of the deals that, if my memory serves me right, Chrissy Quarteng promised had not materialized then when he was business secretary. You know, most of those deals are still in limbo, and that's why you're not having that vitality in the economy. And it's just struggling with the strikes and all of that going on. It's just been problematic. Secondly, when is the back of Russia going to break? Because obviously, when you look at the revenue projection for Russia, it is low. And what it means is that they will not have the resource, except if Putin has another plan to fund the war, because it's already affecting the local economy in Russia as we speak today. So when is their back going to break in all of this?
As far as Russia's concerned, I would have thought fairly soon, but we won't hear the truth, because you have Russia's oil minister immediately saying this morning, on the back of the figures I've just given you, saying we're having no problem in selling oil to the world and also to those countries that we are allowing to take it. So there are two sorts of narratives coming out. There's the one from outside Russia and the one from inside Russia, and Russia is not, as far as I can tell, going to admit defeat on that. The facts, well, I don't think we're going to hear about the facts for quite a long time. It's just like China. It's very, very difficult to triangulate what's actually going on in the economy and how that oil and how those energy, the crimp in energy exports is affecting the economy. I suspect it probably is. And until they themselves come out with the figures and telling us that's actually happening, who knows? Productivity. Let's just be clear what productivity is. Productivity is not growth. Productivity is the output per worker, the improvements in that. That's what's happening. It's a very, very difficult thing to achieve. Very few countries actually achieve it. The United States is slightly ahead of G7, but productivity is something which has not been around in this country, or rather in the UK, for a very long time. And it's something which which most of the G7 countries actually struggle with. You know, if you're going to have shorter working weeks as you are in France, what does that mean for productivity? Does that mean that overall productivity falls? I suppose it does. Does it mean overall growth falls? Yes, it does. It most certainly will mean that. But what is the output per worker? That's the most important thing, and that's something which very, very few countries manage to increase on, unless they're cracking the whip, of course.
All right, so talking about Amazon and the US and Staten Island losing their bid to overturn the historic labor union, it's interesting that since Chris Small's galvanizing or starting the labor union in Amazon last year in April, it has grown, and other Amazon warehouses are actually also considering joining the unions. Indeed, even though you've said, as you rightly guessed, that, or probably guessed right, that Amazon is going to appeal this, and projections are saying that the Labour Board is probably going to be sympathetic to the staff members of Amazon and probably uphold this ruling. What is the impact for other Amazon warehouses in terms of them joining the unions and then changing the trajectory of work or labor laws and the way that staff members are treated at Amazon warehouses in the US? Beyond that, also coming back to LVMH, congratulations to Delphine Arnault, who's taken over reins from her dad has appointed her head. She was executive vice president since 2013, and it's not just nepotism, because it said that she made record sales during her tenure as executive vice president. Also, we see that Inditex, owners of Zara, Massimo Dutti, also a few years back made his daughter chairman. And then Prada boss has said that in 2 years he will be handing over reins to his son. So we see a succession plan across these big brands. I'd like to get your view on this.
I think that it's a very, very strong brand, and how could it possibly go wrong? Everybody fights for front row seats at the Dior fashion show. I mean, what else? All she can do is mess it up, basically, can't she? I mean, that's unfortunately, because it's such a strong brand, and everybody now wants luxury products. I mean, there is a big diversity or diversion or divergence, I suppose is the correct word, in customer performance and customer wants at the moment, and the very rich. I was talking yesterday or the day before about Rolls-Royce cars and Bentleys, and the more expensive they are, the more people want them. And I think the same. It's the old perfume thing, you know, isn't it? If you really actually sold the perfume for what it's physically worth and what it actually costs the company to make, nobody would buy it because it would be so cheap. People think it's cheap perfume. The same goes with Dior. You cannot mess. All she can do is mess it up. I cannot see. I mean, it's what a great job to have. I wouldn't mind that job myself, would you? The other thing about Amazon is it takes Amazon will appeal. There's no question about that. They will definitely appeal the Staten Island ruling. How will it go across the 18,000 people that are going to be laid off from Amazon, and how will it affect it? Amazon will say very strongly that all they're doing is reacting to consumers who don't necessarily want to buy as much as they did. I suspect that'll fall on deaf ears as far as the unions are concerned, but it will be a long drawn-out process. But it's clearly important that Staten Island has been something which the Federal Labour Board has actually recognised as being a proper, in their eyes at least, a proper worker movement which has grown up within Amazon. And I suspect Amazon will have to deal with this, but it will take a long time. These kind of things always do.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson.